art reflects everything, our life, whatever, our lives are essentially infinite in its variety and what it amounts to. Whatever we think about or experience or feel strongly about, that I think is what art is, a reflection. That's why it's so hard to define exactly what art is. Art is a reflection of everything.
Good afternoon, good morning. This is Robert C. Morgan. I am a writer and artist, and I am here with Robert Berry, a well-known conceptual artist, and this is his exhibition. And we are delighted to have this in Daegu. We're doing this interview in his studio in New Jersey, and we are actively talking in relation to his point of view as an artist and what his work means, and I hope you enjoy what he has to say. Robert, I'd like to begin by talking about the early period, just briefly. I understand that when you were at Hunter, that you were doing a number of paintings that were very reductive and very minimal. And I think people are interested in how you moved that idea into something that, for a better word, was more conceptual.
Well, it's my second time after I got out of the Army. My first, going for my undergraduate BFA, I worked mainly with people like Robert Motherwell and Ray Parker, people like that. And I was into a kind of abstract second, third, fourth generation abstract expressionist style. And then I graduated and had to go in the Army. Those days, everybody was drafted or one way or another. When I came out, I decided I wanted to go back and get a master's degree. And what I found was after 2 years, everything had changed. Motherwell was gone. The chairman of the art department was E.C. Goosen. And I kind of latched on, or I should say the first teacher I had was Tony Smith.
The sculptor.
Sculptor, painter, architect.
That's right, he was a painter, that's true, yes.
And he was the one who was really into a kind of minimal approach, very good at explaining it, talking about it. And he got us to go to an Agnes Martin show, in fact, at Robert Elcon Gallery. And I really fell in love with that work. I thought it was just beautiful. And I have to say that might be the beginning of my thinking in that direction. I will say that just before I went in the Army, there was an exhibition of, a big exhibition of Henri Matisse at MoMA. And while I was in the Army, that's all I could think about, really. And then when I came out, I was thinking in terms of this more sort of minimally kind of approach to things, not just sort of splashing the paint around, but a different approach, a different way of thinking about art and making art. And that basically, I just sort of continued on once I got my master's degree.
Now, Robert, you were recognized as one of the leading conceptual artists coming out of New York, and you're often associated with Lawrence Weiner, with Douglas Hubler, and Joseph Kosuth, largely because of the dealer Seth Siegelow that you were in touch with.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, at this moment in your career, do you still reflect on that period, or is that something that you feel is definitely your history and you're not going back to, or do you equivocate sometimes?
I don't equivocate at all, no.
Okay.
I have developed, my whole approach to making art is to continue developing, to work out ideas, take what I've done before and see if I can go a little bit further, or do something with those ideas, change things around, push it in one way or another. That's why, actually, if you go through my shows, you'll see they're all different. They're all about a different idea or pushing something. Just now, I'm working with old work. my last show in Madrid was always changing because part of the show works from 69 through 71, and then the big space between, and then there was the most recent from 2017 and even 18. Work done within the last year. So I like that sort of time switch.
How do you feel about this period back in the 60s and early 70s? Because you were certainly emerging, not only in the United States, but heavily in Europe. You had a great deal of attention. If I'm not mistaken, there was a major show at the Stedelijk Museum, in the vicinity of around 76, if I'm not mistaken, where on the cover of that catalog, all the things that I am now thinking, but
all the things I know,
but not at this moment thinking. And that was dated, I believe.
Yes, it's a very specific time. The idea of time, space has always been an aspect of my work. Even after I left school, I was always thinking about what's going on around the paintings. That's why I would place a painting in the middle of the wall, or I had just only the edges would be painted, so it sort of implied that it extended out beyond the space. The whole idea of that, I always said from the very beginning, that the space in front of the painting and the space between the viewer and the work itself is a very dynamic space, that's where the ideas are. That's where the meaning is, really. So the idea of time and the space and you being there in the situation has always been a part of my work.
The words that you use in your paintings, I think we should just speak about that briefly, but they're not nouns. They're kind of indefinite in terms of meaning. And I think that this is something that people will understand if they spend time looking at your work, that there's nothing specifically notated in the language. So what is it you were trying to get at? Feeling?
You're in yes, partially. Yes. Well, words come from us, so when we see a word, react to it because they're in us. The early work, of course, with text.
Right.
But
like in the Psyching series, you mean?
Yeah. And I still show them.
Right. The Psyching series is
it's trying to describe something that may, in a way, be not describable. Trying to put together some ideas to form something. But of course, it can only be formed in the mind of the viewer if they make the effort to try and do it, or try to deal with the difficulty or the difficulty or the impossibility of really trying to put these ideas together. Many years ago, I read some Chinese philosophers who say the most powerful influences in our lives, the things that affect us the most, are all invisible. And that sort of meant something to me. I said, that's very interesting. So I tried to work with that idea, first through the inner gas and electric waves, stuff like that. Now, the words themselves more recently, the last 30 years, I think of them kind of like objects. They have a history, they have possible meanings. In the mind of the viewer, they may try to put them together like a sentence or something like that, although that's not what I do. But I think of them, I said this before, the way Cézanne thought about apples or something, Each one is a different color, different size, painted sometimes differently. What's the reason for putting together a group of objects in a work of art? What's the purpose of it? Sometimes they seem in real life to have a relationship, but they don't necessarily have to.
Like a still life by Cézanne, for example. I think you told me now that you were thinking more and more about those edges in terms of the words sliding off the wall.
Yes.
And so what does that mean? That you're coming back to a kind of space, an energized space of some time? Okay.
Several things. Yeah, that's part of it, yes. Also, I like the fact that I want to make the words objects. Also, the fact that it may not be clear what the word is. Does it matter? If all you see is a T-I-N-G and you know that's the end of something, what could that word be? Well, it could be many things. It's playing with the idea of what a word is. In fact, in space, in a painting that goes off the edge. That's what you're looking at. How do you deal with that? What is it? Is it important to try and figure out what the word is, or you just deal with it the way it is? That this idea that's incomplete. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
so,
yes.
And I like the whole idea that the painting is the beginning of something. Okay, that the energy, the meaning comes once you get away from it. Once you go off into space or you get into it, that's where it becomes important.
I'm curious about how the word in your work becomes the basis of thought, because this seems very close to a kind of Zen monk idea, okay? Because through the word you enter into a time and space that is beyond the word, but yet it still carries something of the word.
Yeah. I don't really know much about Zen or any of that stuff. I mean, I deal very directly with the ideas of using words, which I use them really because you can't find them in nature. They come from us. They're just not like trees or apples or anything like that. And it just seemed to me that this was an interesting thing to get into. It's so basic, so part of our nature of how we communicate, without necessarily trying to put forth any kind of specific idea, religious or political or whatever. I mean, everybody's got a story, everybody's got some agenda they want to push in their work. I try to stay with art as such. Maybe I'm trying to say something about that, about my position regarding the use of words and language and so forth. I say words, not so much language anymore, but individual words. They've always just been very fascinating to me. I discover them in my reading, mostly reading them. I pick up the Times and all of a sudden I always read with a little red pen and I put a little mark there, make lists. I can show you the list. They're on my desk, thousands of words. And then I edit out the ones that I want, the ones that I don't want, that I think people might react to, that may hit something deep inside you that you can work with on your own terms. I want the viewers to participate in the work, in what it may or may not mean for them. So that to each person, the meaning is going to be different. I'm not trying to sell an agenda. I don't have a story to tell. I'm interested in art and what art can be in our lives, and not as some sort of information machine or something like that. My old teacher, Gene Busey, used to say, art is a form of knowledge. And in a certain way, I agree with him. Yes,
I do too.
And what is not? I mean, if you just read the same thing over and over again, you're not really learning anything.
Right.
So this is one of the things that I try to do, and that's present something different. Art reflects everything, our life. Our lives are essentially infinite in its variety and what it amounts to. Whatever we think about or experience or feel strongly about, that I think is what art is, reflection. That's why it's so hard to define exactly what art is. Art is a reflection of everything. Thanks for inviting me, for even thinking that you might enjoy it. And, I hope to let me know your reactions. That's important to me. What you think of it, and how it works for you, and just look at it carefully and seriously, and if you get into it, spend some time with it, and let me know what you think. That's important.